numbers show we have 36% of our constituents do not have some type of health care. And so that's why it's a problem, and we're going to try and solve it. And there's been discussion for many years. The first time in history I ever heard about it was in our country was Teddy Roosevelt campaigned in 1912 for a national health care plan. And he was actually building on what Germany did in the 1870s. And so something for everyone has been on the table. Truman looked at it, LBJ looked at it, even President Nixon in the early 70s looked at having some type of national health care plan. But it hasn't been done, and of course we know President Clinton tried it in 1993 and 94, and it pretty well cratered. But since then we've had some strides. The S-CHIP program that was created in 1997 covers children of working parents. The problem is it's a cooperative state-federal program like Medicaid, and right now in Texas we have 900,000 children. That's not my numbers, they come out of Austin. 900,000 children who are qualified for either Medicaid or the state S-CHIP program, that the federal government pays 71 cents on the dollar for S-CHIP and about 68 for Medicaid, and but the state doesn't come up with a local match. So we have those children who show up at the emergency rooms when they get sick, and with the flu influenza issue that deals with young children, you know, they're the ones that are going to, that's why we try to expand our community-based health clinics. But that's the problem. So the bill came out of the committee, and this is a copy of the bill, and I guess I had lots of folks write us and call us and ask me if I read the bill. Believe me, I'm on the subcommittee, and we had lots of hearings over the last 2 months, and this is the bill we started with, but on all last week we amended about 60 times. This bill is available on our website. Now we haven't updated it with the amendments that we actually finished on Friday, but that'll be on there as soon as we can get them through the House computer system. But
Here's the whole bill.
We all read that.
oh, believe me, I read it. And in fact, it's when you're sitting through lots of hearings, well, you know, we'll get to the questions in a minute, and you'll be able to have all the comments you want. And but you know, if you'll just show some respect, I'll respect you. But it's in reverse too. So, and again, you're in our district if you're not a constituent. And so I would hope you wouldn't go to, my folks wouldn't go out to Mike McCall's or Ted Poe's and raise Cain with them just because they want to make a point. But anyway, that's why health care and to build on the U.S. experience and the success, we're trying to cover something that will have people. In fact, this bill estimated would cover 97% of people in our country. You're not going to get to the undocumented. They will still show up at the emergency rooms, because under federal law, if you go to a hospital with emergency, they have to stabilize you, and that law is not going to change. But they don't have to, they stabilize you, and then they release you to go to somewhere else if you can't afford it, or you don't have a gold card, for example, from Harris County or some other program. But that's why health care is on the table. The analysis of this bill shows that there are 233,000 people in our district. Our district started at about 640,000. It's probably closer to 700,000 now since 2000 in the last census. So we have 233,000 people who would be eligible for assistance under this legislation. And so that's why I believe in it, and hopefully we'll pass something. Now, are we going to pass something that, you know, 3 committees in the House worked on this legislation. And right now, since it's all out of the committees, the Rules Committee in the House is trying to merge all the other committees with this bill. And some of them, there's disagreement. Now, under our House rules for decades, the Rules Committee does that. And so we'll see what they do, and they come out with it sometime in the middle of September. I expect Congress to probably vote, at least the House side, to vote sometime in September on the bill on the floor. The Senate has 2 committees that deal with it, the Health and Education Committee, and then the Finance Committee. The bill's out of the Health Committee in the Senate, but it's not out of the Finance Committee, so I don't know where it's at in the Senate. And the Senate has taken a different tack than the House. So whatever happens, we'll have a conference committee when the 2 bills are passed and work out the differences. And that may be sometime this year. But again, congressional schedule, I joke, if you think Caribbean time's slow, come to Congress, because it's really difficult to plan on when something happens, because when you have 435 House members and 100 state U.S. senators who actually can filibuster, in the House, at least we can control it, but if every House member wants 5 minutes, then you know it's going to take a while. So that's the problem. The other thing we did this year, and it came out of the House, it actually passed, was the so-called cap and trade bill. And that is an issue that's been around again for a couple of decades. I guess I first noticed it in 1999 when the United States participated in a conference that it was called the Kyoto Conference, and a bunch of nations signed a treaty to try and control carbon output. And the United States never ratified that treaty. In fact, it came up for a vote in the Senate, and it was defeated 99-1. And in the House, we don't get to vote on treaties.
Because it failed? Was it because it failed?
Pardon?
It failed?
Yeah, 99-1 in 1999 or 2000.
That plan failed, didn't it?
Yeah, it failed. But for the last 10 years, Europe developed a cap and trade program, and because, and I'm not a scientist. I was a business major and managed a printing business and went to law school. But I know in the last 10 years, not only scientists, but also in our district, I've watched the opinion change because, first of all, we have the area where we have air quality problems. And, that's just the nature of the system. We have a lot of jobs that we depend on. But, and I joke, I said, if you're worried about carbon, just think about what benzene does to us. So, so we have air quality problems, and I noticed our constituents becoming more and more concerned about not only air quality, but also carbon control. Because it's been 10 years since 1999, and that's been a long time for folks to get information and listen to it. Have to admit, it wasn't my first choice to have a bill, and I wouldn't have done it the way we did it, but that was the bill that was introduced. And I wasn't voting for the bill until we actually got to sit down with some of the energy Democrats, because I come from an energy producing state, and in our case, Congressman Charlie Gonzalez from San Antonio and I were the only two Democrats on the Energy and Commerce Committee that dealt with cap and trade. And we looked and came up with things that would moderate the impact on our basic industry, whether it be the refining or chemical industries, to where they wouldn't be hit as hard. But the number one issue on cap and trade is that I can't vote for a bill that doesn't have this one phrase in it, that unless your country matches what we have to do on controlling carbon, you will not have the right to export in our country. Because I'm not a person that's a free trader. I didn't vote for NAFTA in '93, my first term, and the only one I ever voted for on free trade was with Australia. And frankly, Australia has a higher standard of living than we do. Because what I've seen over these free trade agreements is we export our job base and our industrial capacity, and that's what we are here. We make things in our district. And so that one provision is in there. Now the Senate's saying, oh, it's going to be, WTO won't like it. Well, if that's not in the final version, because I'm not going to continue to see the export of our blue-collar jobs, and because I wish all of us could have PhDs and do whatever, but in our district, people make things. Out of high school, I started and went through an apprenticeship as a printer. I was lucky enough to also go to University of Houston and graduate and help manage the company I was working at, a printing company. But that's why, that's the first thing. The other thing, and I want it to be as fair as possible, but I want to make sure we, with all industries, the chemical industry and the refining industry are our backbone, whereas in the the Northeast, it's steel making. We used to have steel plants here, but they all closed in the 80s. So, and I don't want to see the refined product go the way of the steel products. And although we do have new plants in Arkansas and other places, but so that's what.
You've talked for 15 minutes. Can we ask questions now?
Well,
I'm ready to ask questions.
Well, I'm sure you are, but I'm going to explain these two issues, and if you'd be nice enough to be quiet, I'll be through in just a second.
Congressman, you guys are driving us into the dirt.
Well, okay, you got your comment. I'll make sure everybody else gets to make it. Now, the reason we had cap and trade was that, and that bill passed the House. Now, will it pass the Senate? I don't know. But what we got is a protection for half the refineries, half of what the refineries of carbon are going to put in, 2%. We also took the low carbon fuel standard in the bill.
Say me. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, let me say something. Okay, this is not a football game. I love football. It's not a baseball game. If you want to participate on a regular basis, then I can probably outshout you, but I'm not going to.
Well,
if you don't want to do it,
our opinion then.